When you hear that, the military has increased its presence in the South, I say, no, you're wrong. We have always been there. What you find is that...
So we've not seen more numbers of soldiers being sent there?
No, we even have less number, in the sense that a good number of our personnel who we had to move to reinforce, the Northeast, for example, and parts of the Northwest, of course, they came from somewhere. They when they were leaving, there was nobody said, look, why are you moving these soldiers away from here? Currently, of course, there are levels of violence in the Southeast, to which, by our constitutional demands, we should give support to the civil authority, in this case, the police. And that's the reason why we are engaged in different operations in the Southeast and, of course, other parts of the country, all to the good of the citizens.
Do you feel that sometimes people forget that the military are also Nigerians and that they're people?
Of course. I mean, we are all Nigerians as soldiers. And so we wouldn't, of course, in any way take up arms against our kids and kin. It's not possible.
Do you feel
and for me, take for example, I mean, I'm sure you know where I come from.
Yes, I do.
So will I have to superintend over those that want to, indiscriminately kill, my subjects? No, it's not possible.
You have a budget of almost 3 trillion naira.
Yeah.
And this is the second highest budget in sub-Saharan Africa, second only to South Africa. Is it sufficient? Is that good for the resources that you need to wage these different campaigns that you are, waging across this country?
Can I tell you that resources certainly cannot be sufficient at any time? Yes, 3 trillion. What is 3 trillion? 3 trillion, of course, for defense, for the 2022 budget, which is good. But what's that figure? May I remind you that in the United States, for example, if you go...
But we are not the United States.
I'm just giving you... because you made comparative, you talked about South Africa, and then, of course, ours being third, largest.
Second is the second largest in Sub-Saharan Africa.
In Sub-Saharan Africa. But I'm also letting you know that in 2021, in the US, the defense budget was around $705 billion.
Yeah, but the size of the economy is also different from ours.
One minute. That, of course, translates to about 352 or thereabouts trillion. Now, the point here is, even though 3 trillion appears huge in comparative terms, you must also look at what it can do relative to the challenges that we have. But of course, I must remain very grateful that Mr. President has taken that bold step, and of course the Federal Executive Council, for them to have come to a realization of the fact that we must put security into its proper perspective and then begin to escalate interventions, and then to which that when it's done, everyone will be happy for it, so that, of course, in future, when things would have normalized, then other sectors of the economy can now begin to take prominence in terms of attention. But I must tell you that is the right step in the right direction. Even though, of course, we would have loved that, of course, more will be given. But we also know that you can't be asking for what doesn't exist.
The military has, again, to go back to the issue of allegations, especially by organizations like Amnesty International, of, human rights abuses, in some cases with some evidence. Is the Nigerian military adhering to international protocols when it comes to combat? Why do we keep getting these stories of abuses by the military?
Daria, let me tell you that the Armed Forces of Nigeria is a professional armed force.
Some of the evidence suggests
just
otherwise.
1 minute. We didn't just jump in. We're not a ragtag army. We're not a ragtag armed forces. The challenge that we face today as a country is a challenge which, in theoretical terms, have been termed asymmetric warfare. This war has many fronts. There are those who are behind the scenes, both internal and external. And so when people come up with narratives, please do not discount.
Are you suggesting that there is another narrative war taking place?
Of course. But we won't be deterred by those shenanigans. So, in some, we're a professional force. We have code of ethics. We have protocols that we follow. We respect human rights, all the international humanitarian laws, and of course, laws of armed conflicts. Besides being taught in our various establishments, they remain part and parcel of our operating protocols.
Do any of your officers face disciplinary actions? Are you able to share some of those with us so people can be reassured that you take, the necessary measures where officers are found wanting?
Across the theaters of operation that we have, there are standing court-martials. Besides, in various formations and units, there are on-the-room procedures, disciplinary procedures that have been in place. And we equally have our, our laws, operating laws, the Armed Forces Act, upon which all these things that we're talking about are well enshrined, and any contravention is dealt with.
On the regional issues, because I don't think we can talk about Nigerian security without looking at what's going on in Central African Republic, the Sahel, other parts of West Africa. Is it possible for us to secure Nigeria if some of these regions don't see security?
Because threats, criminality, have no respect for borders. And so this is the reason why we have engaged our neighbors. We have engaged in both at the bilateral and multilateral levels, all the countries in the sub-region. And they hope that with a collective approach to this challenge, then of course we'll be improving on the situation back home. But of course, security must be viewed not from just national perspective. It must also, take into consideration what happens within the sub-region and of course the region itself, and even globally.
And since you have that broad picture with all of sort of the engagements that are taking place both regionally but also, internationally, how soon is Nigeria going to sort of return to a situation where people are not getting kidnapped, Boko Haram is defeated, and people can generally feel safe?
Very soon, I would say, but may I remind you...
Soon, as in 2 years, 1 year, 6 months?
Just 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
May I remind you that currently Mr. President is in Glasgow. And for the whole world leaders, they're in Glasgow. What has taken them there? The threat that faces the world. Nigeria is within that global world, global environment. And so manifestations that you find in our shores, violent in nature, must also, be linked to the global threat profile. But that it's not to mean that we will not escalate actions to be able to redress them. With what we're doing, I can assure you, and of course by extension the populace, that a lot of relief and reprieve will come.